we wanted to do a real quick piece on when we talk about pulls with spinning gear. Using spinning gear for trolling, and you want to repeat your depth accurately again and again and again. You have to be fairly consistent with pulling the line out, or you have to mark your line or have some sort of marked line to begin with. The way that I do it is fairly simple. This is just your basic spinning outfit. This is a 8'6" Lamba glass, a 3000 size spinning reel, which is very common for what we use. It's not important how it's all set up, but essentially when you're talking about pulls, what I do is I put my finger on the front of that spool and I open the bail, and then I begin pulling, and what I try and do is get about a foot. If that's not a foot, that's more than a foot, right? So the face of that reel to right that first eye for ultimate repeatability is 21 inches. So if I did that, I know I've got 21 inches out, right? And the more times I do that, of course, you have to make that conversion in your head. So if I try and do it to where I think I'm pulling a foot out, which is what I do, essentially fairly quickly, right? And I like to use my finger. I don't pull against the drag with a closed bail because it does introduce a little bit of line to it. And that's essentially it. And you just count that every time that you go out and make sure that you're pulling out the same amount. So it's like yesterday, I think I was running about 60, and that seemed to work. I was able to repeat that depth again and again and again. So that's what we're doing when we're talking about pulls with a spinning rod. I don't always or often really use a spinning rod for trolling, but there are times when it's useful, right? Sometimes you just want to fish a spinning rod because they're pretty fun. They're enjoyable to play fish on, or that's the rod you have, or whatever. You can run a spinning rod on a downrigger, anything like that. But just for basic long line trolling, if you hit a repeatable length here every time and let out the same amount every time, again, if you want to be very specific, measure from here to here and run from here to here. This one's 21, 8'6" rod. That's a 9'6" rod, 24 inches from the face of the reel to that first eyelet. So if you measure that, or just use that as a kind of a rough idea. Now, if you have a shorter spinning rod, obviously that first eyelet's going to be a different distance away. So you need to know what that is. Most of my rods are 8, 8'6", 9, 9'6". Okay.
So Mike was talking about depth control and how he feathers out a spinning rod when he's trolling. I do it a little bit different. I know it does put a little twist in the line, as Mike likes to point out, but for me it's just easier to control. And I'm really working on the exact distance between the face of my spool and my eyelet. So I turn the drag way down, I put my hand against there, and I make sure I bump into that eyelet. Same thing, grab the face of the reel and bump in there. And then I know that my pulls are repeatable because I'm always touching the face of my spinning rod and my eyelet. It does put a little twist in there, but I tend to change my line out every year. And I don't see that much of a difference with it when I'm doing that much change out.
The twist is not that drastic, really, and if you look at both those rods I just showed you, both those rods have braid on them. So there's a top shot for the length of the rod, and the rest of it is braid. Not that that's perfect, but it does slow down the twist quite a bit.